So thank you to everybody for coming. Today we're going to talk about stigma, and I've invited Stephanie Hastings from Pro A. It's a grassroots organization, and I got the pleasure of meeting her when I was doing my certified recovery specialist. So I appreciate her taking the time out to talk to us today about this important topic. So when as I was getting ready to talk, Pastor Don's not here and being our leader today, I looked at the word stigma, and from the Greek word, I'll put my glasses on, sorry. Stigma, from the Greek word of the same spelling meaning mark or puncture, and it came into the English through Latin to mean a mark burned into the skin to significant disgrace. And it did not take long for stigma to be used figuratively, as it is commonly used today for the negative stereotype or reputation attached to something such as, we talk about the stigma of addiction. So I got this information from vocabulary.com if anybody wants to look it up. But I was also praying about this time for us to share in this. I really think it's my heart, because I know that there is so much stigma in addiction. But I also looked at the book of Matthew. And in the book of Matthew 7, verse 1, it says, "Do not judge and criticize and condemn others, so that you may not be judged and criticized and condemned yourself. For just as you judge and criticize and condemn others, you will be judged and criticized and condemned, and in accordance with the measure you deal out to others, it will be dealt again to you. Why do you stare from within at a very small particle that is in your brother's eye, but do not become aware and consider the beam of timber that is in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, let me get the tiny particle out of your eye, where there is a beam of timber in your own eye? You hypocrite. First get the beam of timber out of our own eye, and then you will see clearly to take the tiny particle out of your brother's eye." So I know that, that's out of God's word, and I find it very important that we need to, when we're working with people caught in addiction, that recovery is a choice that we hope that everyone makes, but also I've learned through walking through my son's recovery and my own recovery through my son's addiction that the stigma that was shown against him, he was just a junkie and that he was not going to get well. And through the journey of how I learned the importance of being able to not be judging others. And so it was important because I didn't know anything about addiction until I was shoved pretty far, abruptly in with my son's addiction. So I think this is an important piece for all of us to learn. It doesn't even have to do with drug addiction. It's our stereotypes and stigmas of where we are in life. And I think God's word, states that we need to love one another as ourselves and how God loves us. And His blood covers all of that in grace. So none of this is for, you need to listen to this, and so it's not anything for condemnation. But I just really feel that I really enjoyed this training when I took it through Pro A for my certified recovery specialist certification. So I think it will be a good learning tool for all of us here today, and I appreciate everybody's time. And I'll send it over to Stephanie. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Before we get into the nitty-gritty, I gave each of you a yellow folder. There is a PowerPoint presentation in there. That's not going to be something that we actually go over today because we don't have the slides or the time. This is a full 6-hour training, so I'm trying to take the important parts of the training and include that in today. But what I would like to start off of, on the right side of your folder, there are handouts, and the second page in should be a pretest. So I would like to see where we all feel we are before we start this training regarding stigma. Turn it off. I'm fine with whatever, yeah. And just so I know time, what time do I go until 2? Yes. Just wanted to get the test Don't skip ahead. Don't skip ahead. Otherwise, you'll be waiting quite a while everybody else does that. How are we doing? Do we need a couple minutes? Yes. No.
Just the first page, front and back, right?
Front and back, yes. Yep. No. Pre-test.
Pretest, yeah, I probably said wrong. Did you say pretest? Yeah. Yeah, and I saw you filling that one out, so I thought we. Oh, sorry, yep. I got it.
Okay, so we'll go over the answers real quick, and then I'll give a little bit more spiel about me and who I am and how I got into Pro A and what Pro A is, what Pro A does. So addiction is primarily a what? An illness. An illness. This next question, if you didn't know the answer, that's okay. We are going to discuss it today, so you will walk away knowing the answer to that question. Psychological phenomenon in which lower expectations placed upon an individual leads to poor performance is called the Golem effect. Which is the best way to describe an individual who is seeking recovery from chemical abuse? A person with an addiction. Which is not a good method for advocating for public policies and programs that initiate and sustain recovery from substance use disorders. right? You want to not limit the number of persons in recovery in your advocacy efforts. Which law mandates that all group health plans in the Commonwealth, including HMOs and MCOs, must provide coverage for chemical abuse or dependency benefits? It's actually the Pennsylvania Act 106. And with the Medicaid expansion that was just signed into law, I think it was in March or January of this year, no MCO has the right to deny services. It is absolutely, actually any health plan now has to cover substance abuse treatment. Yeah. Images in the media affect the stigma of addiction. True or false? True. The best ways to deal with addiction is incarceration. False. Stigma associated with addiction, while hurtful, plays no role in treatment of persons affected by this disease. That's false. That's false. Most addicts come from broken homes and have little or no education. False. I can fight stigma by changing my own language. True. Yes. The next part in your packet is going to be the self-assessment, but before I get into that, as Heidi had mentioned, she had run into me in a training prior to me joining Pro-A, which we are a grassroots organization. We are the only statewide organization that does not provide direct one-on-one service. So it puts us in a very unique opportunity to be able to educate and advocate on platforms where there's not any kickback or feedback coming into our organization based on the services that we provide. So we spend a lot of our time working to increase awareness about addiction, to reduce the stigma, to develop strong recovery community organizations and connect them across the state so that it's not just one voice in this area being heard about stigma, and it's not this voice out near Pittsburgh that's being heard about stigma. It's the entire state coming together. And we're going to make a really loud, messy noise because we got a lot of passionate people who, you know, see that this is a disease. These are human beings, and they deserve the same respect that you or I deserve. But for myself, I was a clinician for over 20 years. So I recently made the move to advocacy and policy work in January. Prior to that, I had spent 20 years as both inpatient, outpatient therapist, clinical director for drug and alcohol. So I have covered the gamut from adolescence all the way up through adult. I've worked with probation, I've worked with parole, I've worked with Department of Corrections, you name it, I've had them in my office. But I felt that there was a much stronger push to have the rights of those we were working for protected and seen that they are humans who, you know what, want the same life we want, and they have the right to that. So today we're going to talk a lot more about stigma and how stigma develops, what brews stigma, how do we change it, how do we change it by talking about how we speak about it, and how do we move forward from here? What's the impact that we can make? So that's a little overview. Now, as I mentioned, this is like a 6-hour training, so I'm kind of giving you guys the highlights of the importance of stigma. But if anybody has any questions after today or would like to learn more about what it was I was talking about, I've given you all my card. Please feel free to email me. I'm more than happy to talk to you at any time, okay? So now I would like you guys to please take a moment and fill out the self-assessment. Oh, look at you, Heidi, with the coffee. I just noticed that. Huh? Hey, thanks, Ed.